As the legend goes, on September 28, 1918, as World War I was nearing its end, Private Henry James Tandey came across a wounded and unarmed German soldier and spared his life. He was Adolf Hitler. Tandey supposedly encountered the future dictator during the Battle of Marcoing, after which he was awarded the Victory Cross and emerged as a hero. One of the most decorated privates of the British forces during World War I, Tandey eventually became famous because of what he reportedly did when he faced Hitler, a rumor that seems to have been spread by the Fuhrer himself. Decades later, Tandey would remark, quote, "If only I had known what he would turn out to be. When I saw all the people, women and children he had killed and wounded, I was sorry to God I let him go." Diamond in the rough. Henry James Tandey was born in Warwickshire in August of 1891. His father was a former soldier, and his mother passed away when he was still a child. Thus, Tandey spent part of his childhood in an orphanage, and later became a boiler attendant at a hotel. Shortly before turning 19, Tandey enlisted in the British Army with the Green Howards Regiment. He served in Guernsey and South Africa after basic training. When World War I broke out, the young private joined the Battle of Ypres. 2 years later, he was wounded at the Battle of the Somme and hospitalized, returning to the front line in 1917. Still, he was wounded yet again at the Battle of Passchendaele. In July of 1918, the private was transferred from the Green Howards to the Duke of Wellington's West Riding Regiment and posted to the 5th Battalion. Then, on August 28th, the battalion saw action at the west of the Canal du Nord during the Second Battle of Cambrai, where Tandey was leading one of several bombing parties in the German trenches when he saw that the forward parties were being held up. He then called upon 2 other men, and under fire, the 3 soldiers dashed across no man's land and reached an enemy trench. Coming from the rear, they then bombed the trench and returned with no less than 20 prisoners. With that first exploit, Tandey facilitated the capture of the German positions and received the Distinguished Conduct Medal. His citation praised his, quote, "daring courage throughout the whole of the operations." 2 weeks later, the 5th Battalion became engaged in an attack at Havrincourt, and on September 11th, he rescued several wounded men while under fire. Moreover, the following day, he led a bombing party into enemy trenches and returned with another handful of prisoners. This time, the private was bestowed with the military medal. True hero. Towards the end of September of 1918, Tandey was involved in a counterattack at the canal following the capture of Marcoing, with relentless machine gun fire targeting his platoon. Crawling forward within the village, Tandey then located the gun position and led a few men into a house. They then silenced the machine gun with Lewis gunfire. Notably, later that same day, he alone fixed the damaged bridge, replaced the planks, and allowed the rest of the British forces to cross over. However, the Germans overthrew his platoon by the evening. Private H. Lister would later recount, quote, "Private Tandey, without hesitation, though he was twice wounded very nastily, took the leading part in our bayonet charge on the enemy to get clear. Though absolutely faint, he refused to leave us until we had completely finished our job, collected our prisoners, and restored the line." Tandey and 8 comrades had ultimately captured 37 enemies through sheer bravery. The story goes that during that battle, the British forced their enemies to retreat, and suddenly a wounded and unarmed German soldier wandered into Tandey's line of fire. Still, the private could not, in all conscience, shoot a disarmed and weary man, and he would later recall, quote, "I took aim, but couldn't shoot a wounded man, so I let him go." The German thankfully nodded and walked away. Back home, Tandey became a beloved hero and was awarded the Victory Cross in December, securing a place among the most decorated privates of World War I. However, news of his exploits would reach even Germany, where one day a young Adolf Hitler reportedly spotted his picture in a newspaper, in which Tandey was seen carrying an injured soldier on his back. The future Fuhrer was then able to put a name to the face of the man who had spared his life. Urban legend. In 1938, 20 years after the so-called War to End All Wars ended, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain paid a visit to the Fuhrer at his Bavarian retreat known as the Berghof in an attempt to deter the unnecessary violence. While there, the Prime Minister noticed a particular painting hanging in Hitler's study. The picture in question was a replica of Italian painter Fortunino Matania's depiction of a scene at the Menin crossroads in 1914, with a soldier carrying a fellow combatant to safety, in the same fashion as Tandey's newspaper clipping. Although the details are blurry and the facts are difficult to corroborate, what happened next gave birth to an extraordinary legend. It is said that Hitler turned to Chamberlain and told him that the man in the painting had spared his life. Supposedly, he said, quote, "That man came so near to killing me that I thought I should never see Germany again. Providence saved me from such devilish accurate fire as those English boys were aiming at us." The Museum of the Green Howards, Private Tandey's former regiment, commissioned the painting from Matania in 1923 and confirmed that a copy was hanging on Hitler's wall. A member of the Fuhrer's staff, Dr. Otto Schwend, had come across the painting and obtained a large photo as a personal gift to Hitler. Captain Biedermann, Hitler's adjutant, replied in a letter, quote, "The Fuhrer is naturally very interested in things connected with his own war experiences, and he was obviously moved when I showed him the photograph and explained the thought which you had in causing it to be sent to him." At age 29, Hitler had indeed been involved in said battles in late 1918. In fact, he was twice decorated as a soldier, but he was temporarily blinded by mustard gas that October and therefore sent to a military hospital in Germany. While hospitalized, Hitler learned of the German surrender, and his initial feelings of glory turned into deep disillusion and even despondency. As he admitted in 1941, quote, "When I returned from the war, I brought back home with me my experiences at the front. Out of them, I built my National Socialist community." Demystifying the legend. Legend says that upon realizing who the man in the picture was, Hitler asked Chamberlain to pass on his gratitude. The Prime Minister himself then allegedly phoned Tandey to exchange details on the story, but the private was not home, so he talked to his nephew. However, British telecom archives indicate that Tandey didn't even own a telephone. Furthermore, modern research indicates that it was nearly impossible for the two men to have met. Their respective units were indeed deployed close to each other, once in 1914 at Ypres, Belgium, and again in 1918 near Marcoing, France. But as Tandey's biographer David Johnson pointed out, the meeting was supposed to have happened on September 28th, and evidence from the Bavarian State Archive shows that the then Lieutenant Corporal Hitler was on leave between the 25th and the 27th. The expert stated, quote, "This means that Hitler was either on leave or returning from leave at the time, or with his regiment 50 miles north of Marcoing." Johnson then inferred that Hitler might have made up the story, as he became aware that Tandey was among the most decorated and beloved heroes from World War I. Quote, "If he was going to have his life spared by a British soldier, who better than a famous war hero who had won a Victoria Cross, military medal, and a Distinguished Conduct Medal in a matter of weeks?" With his godlike self-perception, the story added to his own myth, that he'd been spared for something greater, that he was somehow chosen. His story embellished his reputation nicely. Meanwhile, Private Tandey was non-committal about the event. He did acknowledge sparing soldiers on September 28th, but despite his initial disposition to entertain the idea, he always claimed that he needed more information to confirm the story. In 1939, he told the Coventry Herald, quote, "According to them, I've met Adolf Hitler. Maybe they're right, but I can't remember him." Tandey's biographer went to great lengths to back his subject, stating that, quote, "We must not forget that in 1918, no one knew who Hitler was. Why would Henry remember and regret that specific encounter?" Regardless, the newspapers fueled the urban legend, claiming that, quote, "Nothing Henry did that night could ease his sickening sense of guilt," and, quote, "He could have stopped this. He could have changed the course of history." Still, the mystery surrounding the supposed epic serendipity remains the stuff of legend, leaving open the possibility that the world could have been a much different place. Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our Dark Documentaries channels for many more historical anecdotes from the World Wars. Stay tuned.